Some people collect art, others collect jewels or fortunes. But there was one woman who collected something far more potent, powerful men, and through them, she collected the world. Her life was a masterpiece of ambition, a dazzling and sometimes ruthless ascent to the highest echelons of global power. But if you were to ask her, she was simply a woman in love time and time again. This is the story of a woman who began life as an English aristocrat, became Winston Churchill's daughter-in-law, and ended it as the United States ambassador to France. She was called the greatest courtesan of the 20th century, a label she despised, but one that clung to her like expensive perfume. She was a master of reinvention, a political powerhouse disguised as the perfect hostess. Her name was Pamela Harriman, and her story is a lesson in how charm, intelligence, and sheer unwavering will can change the course of history, one dinner party at a time. It's a story of glamour and grit, of passion and politics, and of a woman who refused to be a footnote in anyone's story but her own. Pamela Beryl Digby entered the world on March 20th, 1920, as the eldest child of Edward Kenelm Digby, the 11th Baron Digby, and his wife, Constance Pamela Alice Bruce. Her birth occurred in an era still reeling from the devastation of World War I, which had ended just 2 years prior, leaving deep scars on British society. For the aristocracy, however, the interwar period represented a fragile continuation of pre-war opulence and tradition, insulated from the broader economic and social upheavals affecting the working classes. Pamela's family embodied this elite stratum. Her father was a decorated war hero and landowner, while her mother came from a lineage connected to Scottish nobility. The Digby family seat, Minturn Magna, was a sprawling estate in Dorset, encompassing over 2,000 acres of picturesque countryside, complete with manicured gardens, ancient woodlands, and a grand house that dated back centuries. This setting provided Pamela with a childhood that was both enchanting and confining, characterized by the rigid hierarchies and expectations of the British upper class. From her earliest years, Pamela's life was governed by the unwritten codes of aristocratic upbringing. Days were filled with activities designed to instill discipline, poise, and a sense of entitlement. Riding ponies across the estate's rolling hills, participating in fox hunts that reinforced social bonds among the gentry, and attending formal teas where etiquette was paramount. Education for girls in this milieu was secondary to social grooming. Formal schooling was minimal, often conducted by governesses at home focusing on basic literacy, deportment, and languages like French to enhance conversational charm rather than intellectual depth. The ultimate goal was clear and unyielding. Young women like Pamela were groomed not for careers or independence, but for advantageous marriages that would preserve or elevate family status. Beauty, charm, and the ability to manage a household were prized above all, with any intellectual pursuits viewed as ornamental enhancements to make one a more appealing wife to a titled peer with substantial estates. Yet even in this structured environment, Pamela exhibited traits that set her apart from her peers. Described by contemporaries as bouncy and wholesome, she possessed a vibrant energy, accentuated by her striking coppery red hair and an infectious vitality that naturally attracted attention. Beneath this outward exuberance, however, lay a sharper, more calculating intellect. Observers noted her keen observational skills. She was not merely participating in the rituals of her class, but analyzing them, absorbing the dynamics of power, influence, and social maneuvering. This restlessness hinted at an inner dissatisfaction with the prescribed path, suggesting that Pamela viewed her privileged world not as an endpoint, but as a starting point for something greater. As Pamela transitioned into adolescence, Her education followed the conventional pattern for aristocratic daughters, culminating in a brief period of refinement abroad. In 1937, at the age of 17, she was sent to a finishing school in Munich, Germany, for 6 months, a common practice intended to polish social graces, improve language skills, and broaden cultural exposure without encouraging radical independence. This stint, however, unfolded against a backdrop of rising geopolitical tension, transforming what might have been a routine experience into a pivotal moment of personal and political awakening. Munich in 1937 was the heart of Nazi Germany, a city pulsating with propaganda and militarism under Adolf Hitler's regime. Pamela's time there coincided with the consolidation of Nazi power, marked by events like the ongoing rearmament and the cult of personality surrounding Hitler. Through her social connections, she formed a friendship with Unity Mitford, a British aristocrat infamous for her fervent admiration of Hitler and her integration into the Nazi inner circle. This association led to a remarkable and little discussed encounter. Pamela was introduced to Hitler himself during one of Mitford's gatherings. Far from being swayed by the Führer's charisma, Pamela found him underwhelming, his demeanor petty, and his speeches laced with alarming fanaticism. This direct exposure to authoritarianism provided her with an early lesson in political discernment, sharpening her ability to assess leaders and ideologies critically. The experience profoundly influenced her worldview. Witnessing the fervor of Nazi rallies and the manipulation of crowds contrasted starkly with the genteel predictability of Dorset life, revealing the fragility of societal structures and the dangers of unchecked power. It instilled in her a heightened awareness of global complexities, fostering a pragmatic realism that would later inform her diplomatic pursuits. Upon returning to England, Pamela carried these insights with her, marking the end of her naive youth and the beginning of a more strategic approach to navigating the world. Following her return from Munich, Pamela was thrust into the 1938 London season, a centuries-old tradition that served as the pinnacle of aristocratic matchmaking. This annual whirlwind of debutante balls, garden parties, and formal dinners functioned as a highly orchestrated marketplace where eligible young women were presented to potential suitors from the upper echelons of society. Dressed in elegant gowns and adorned with family jewels, debutantes like Pamela were expected to captivate with their poise and wit, securing proposals that aligned with familial alliances. Pamela excelled in this arena, her natural charisma and striking appearance making her a standout figure among the season's participants. She attended events at prestigious venues, such as Buckingham Palace and exclusive clubs, where the air was thick with the scent of ambition and tradition. Yet beneath her successful facade, Pamela harbored a growing sense of ennui. The process, with its repetitive rituals and superficial interactions, felt limiting to her restless spirit. She was not content with merely marrying well into another aristocratic family. Instead, she sought avenues for personal elevation and escape from the constraints of her class. Her analytical mind was already at play, evaluating suitors not just for status, but for the opportunities they might unlock in a changing world. By the late 1930s, Europe stood on the precipice of another global conflict, with tensions escalating through events like the Anschluss of Austria in 1938 and the Munich Agreement later that year. Ironically, the same city where Pamela had studied. For many in the aristocracy, this looming war represented a dire threat to their way of life, potentially eroding estates, fortunes, and social hierarchies. For Pamela, however, it symbolized something entirely different. a disruptive force that could dismantle the rigid expectations binding her. The impending chaos of World War II offered a turbulent backdrop against which she could redefine herself. As traditional structures crumbled through rationing, bombings, and shifting power dynamics, opportunities arose for individuals with adaptability and cunning. Pamela's early experiences, from her sheltered childhood to her eye-opening time in Nazi Germany, had prepared her to thrive in such uncertainty. She recognized that the war would not only shatter the old order, but also create spaces for reinvention, allowing her to pursue ambitions beyond marriage and society balls. In the ensuing rubble, Pamela would discover her freedom, leveraging her intellect and charm to forge a path in politics, diplomacy, and influence that would define her later life as Pamela Harriman. Pamela Digby's first major opportunity in life arrived through her connection to Randolph Churchill, the son of one of Britain's most prominent figures. Randolph carried the weight of his father's renowned name, Winston Churchill, who, during this period, was sidelined politically, but remained a vocal critic, alerting the nation to the growing dangers posed by Nazi Germany. Their initial encounter occurred on a blind date in the summer of 1939, amid the tense final weeks before the outbreak of World War II, as diplomatic efforts to maintain peace rapidly deteriorated. Randolph embodied many traits that society cautioned young women to avoid. He was bold and overconfident, displayed arrogance, had a reputation for infidelity, consumed alcohol excessively, and struggled with severe gambling debts that threatened his financial stability. Despite these evident shortcomings, Pamela looked beyond them, recognizing the prestige associated with the Churchill name and the potential access it offered to influential circles and historical significance. Remarkably, Randolph proposed marriage during their second date. The couple progressed quickly from there, announcing their engagement within a few weeks. On October 4th, 1939, merely a month following Britain's declaration of war against Germany, they exchanged vows. At the time of the wedding, Pamela Digby had become Pamela Churchill, stepping into a new identity at the young age of 19. From its inception, the union between Pamela and Randolph proved disastrous as a personal partnership. Randolph's self-destructive tendencies, including his frequent cruelty and emotional volatility, created an unstable environment that strained their relationship almost immediately. However, in terms of strategic advancement, the marriage represented a brilliant decision on Pamela's part, positioning her advantageously within elite social and political spheres. This became particularly evident when Winston Churchill ascended to the role of Prime Minister in May 1940, catapulting the family, and Pamela by extension, into the epicenter of Britain's wartime leadership and decision-making processes. Shortly after, Randolph was deployed with his military regiment to the Middle East, leaving Pamela to navigate her new circumstances independently. Rather than facing isolation, she integrated herself into the Churchill household. Initially residing at 10 Downing Street, the official residence of the Prime Minister, and later relocating to the secure underground facilities of the Cabinet War Rooms. These bunkers served as the operational hub for directing the war, providing a fortified space amid the escalating conflict. As the German Luftwaffe unleashed the Blitz on London, with relentless bombing campaigns that devastated large sections of the city and instilled widespread fear, Pamela Churchill adapted and found her calling in this high-stakes environment. Far from being merely a vulnerable relative, she established herself as a vital asset within the Churchill inner circle. She excelled as a gracious hostess, welcoming and entertaining Winston's distinguished guests, including key political and military figures. During the incessant air raids, her calm demeanor offered comfort and stability to those around her. Additionally, she proved adept at maintaining confidentiality, safeguarding sensitive information amid the chaos of wartime operations. Pamela developed skills in managing Winston's well-known volatile temper, often engaging him in late-night card games to ease tensions. She listened intently as he deliberated strategies, with generals and international leaders absorbing the intricacies of high-level discussions. Winston came to regard her highly, affectionately referring to her as a rock for her unwavering support and reliability. In exchange, Pamela gained an unparalleled education in the art of governance and leadership. She observed firsthand how Winston employed a combination of charisma, bold rhetoric, persuasive oratory, and unyielding determination to lead both individuals and the entire nation through crisis. This immersion at the pinnacle of authority equipped her with profound insights into the operational dynamics of power, shaping her understanding of influence on a global scale. With Randolph absent and showing little concern for their marriage, Pamela uncovered and refined her innate abilities during these formative years. She realized she was not suited to the traditional role of a passive spouse confined to domestic duties. Instead, she flourished in environments centered on building deep personal connections, fostering intimacy, and wielding subtle influence. London's wartime atmosphere was filled with the influential men, diplomats, officials, and military personnel, who were often displaced from their families, enduring solitude, and confronting the constant threat of mortality. In this context, Pamela provided a compelling refuge that blended allure with genuine emotional support. Her aristocratic background and physical beauty were complemented by her warmth, empathy, and exceptional listening skills. She possessed an extraordinary ability to make any man feel uniquely valued, as though he were the most exceptional and intelligent individual she had encountered. To enhance these interactions, she proactively researched their passions, delved into the literature they favored, and familiarized herself with the details of their professional domains. This transformed her from a mere romantic interest into a trusted advisor and indispensable companion, allowing her to navigate and thrive in circles of power. Pamela's most impactful romantic involvement during the war was with Averil Harriman, who served as President Franklin D. Roosevelt's special representative in Europe. As a prominent figure in American business and diplomacy, Harriman was not only attractive and sophisticated, but also 28 years older than Pamela, bringing a wealth of experience to their relationship. Stationed in London to oversee the Lend-Lease Initiative, a critical program supplying Britain with essential American resources to sustain its resistance against Germany, their bond developed at the intersection of personal affection and international strategy. Harriman was enchanted by Pamela's vitality and sharp intellect. He arranged for her to reside in an elegant apartment within an annex of the Dorchester Hotel, and their affair soon became a topic of widespread gossip among London's elite. Beyond the romance, Harriman acted as a guide, instructing her in the subtleties of U.S. political systems, the complexities of global finance, and the appreciation of contemporary art. This broadened her perspectives well outside the traditional boundaries of British upper-class society. For Pamela, the relationship functioned as a rigorous training ground where she mastered the discourse of authority from an expert. When Harriman's duties required him to relocate to Moscow, he concluded the affair, gifting her a diamond bracelet from Cartier, and, according to her later accounts, leaving her emotionally distraught. Yet, the true legacy was far more enduring. an enriched knowledge base, and a robust network of American connections that would profoundly influence her future trajectory. Pamela did not dwell on the end of her relationship with Harriman for an extended period. She soon entered into another notable affair with Edward R. Murrow, the charismatic American radio journalist whose compelling broadcasts vividly conveyed the horrors and resilience of the Blitz to audiences in the United States, shaping public opinion across the Atlantic. Although Murrow was married, he, like many before him, was drawn to Pamela's distinctive fusion of refined nobility and grounded, insightful appeal. In addition to Murrow, she formed connections with other prominent individuals, such as the affluent American Jock Whitney. Through these relationships, Pamela solidified a pattern that would define her subsequent life, identifying a man of substantial power and intrigue, immersing herself fully in his sphere, assimilating his expertise and social ties, and thereby integrating his influence into her own ambit of authority. This approach not only sustained her during the war, but also laid the foundation for her evolving role as a masterful navigator of elite networks. The conclusion of World War II in 1945 brought an end to one of the most devastating global conflicts in history, but it also signaled the dissolution of Pamela Churchill's marriage to Randolph Churchill, the son of Winston Churchill. Their union, which had begun in 1939 amidst the uncertainties of impending war, had been strained by years of wartime hardships, including Randolph's gambling habits, heavy drinking, and frequent absences due to his military service and journalistic pursuits. Personal differences further exacerbated the rift, as Pamela's social ambitions clashed with Randolph's volatile personality. The divorce was handled amicably, with both parties acknowledging that reconciliation was impossible in the post-war era. Pamela received a modest settlement, which included custody of their young son, Winston, and some financial support, but it was far from sufficient for long-term independence. This marked a pivotal turning point for Pamela, who was then 25 years old and determined not to fade into obscurity. The pre-war Europe that Pamela had known, a world of aristocratic grandeur, debutante balls, and rigid social hierarchies, had been irretrievably shattered by the devastation of battles, bombings, and occupations across the continent. Cities like London, Berlin, and Paris bore the scars of destruction, and the old nobility faced economic ruin and social upheaval. Rejecting the subdued provincial existence that might have awaited her as a minor English aristocrat, perhaps retreating to a quiet country estate or relying on family charity, Pamela chose a bolder path, armed with the prestigious Churchill surname, which evoked immense recognition and respect not only in Britain, but across the Allied nations. Due to her father-in-law's role as wartime prime minister, she leveraged her extensive international connections. These ties had been forged through her wartime experiences, including hosting influential figures at the British Embassy and maintaining correspondence with key political and social leaders. With ambition as her guide, she set her sights on Paris, the French capital that was slowly emerging from the shadows of Nazi occupation and Vichy collaboration, ready to reclaim its status as the world's epicenter of glamour, cultural sophistication, artistic innovation, and high fashion. Upon arriving in Paris in the late 1940s, Pamela entered a city in the midst of revival. The liberation in 1944 had lifted the veil of oppression, but the immediate post-war years were marked by rationing, reconstruction efforts, and a lingering sense of austerity. Yet Paris was buzzing with optimism. Christian Dior's new look fashion revolutionized women's silhouettes, jazz clubs thrived in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and intellectuals like Jean-Paul Sartre gathered in cafes. Pamela navigated this scene with vulnerability. Despite her renowned name and modest divorce settlement, she lacked substantial personal wealth, relying on her charm, intellect, and social acumen to sustain herself. It was in this vibrant yet fiercely competitive environment, where old money mingled with new opportunists, that she began to build her legacy as one of the 20th century's most accomplished courtesans, using relationships strategically to ascend elite circles while maintaining an aura of elegance and discretion. Pamela's approach to romance in her early Paris years was deliberate and calculated, viewing it not merely as emotional indulgence, but as a tool for personal and social advancement. She quickly initiated a high-profile affair with Prince Ali Khan, the son of the Aga Khan III, and a figure of immense charisma and extravagance. Ali Khan, who served as a diplomat for Pakistan at the United Nations and was known for his playboy lifestyle, including polo playing and lavish parties, was still married to Hollywood actress Rita Hayworth at the time. Their marriage, which began in 1949, was already turbulent, adding layers of scandal and intrigue to Pamela's liaison with him. The affair, which likely started around 1949 to 1950, was passionate and mutually beneficial. For Pamela, it expanded her visibility among the international jet set, introducing her to celebrities, royals, and tycoons at events like the Cannes Film Festival or Monte Carlo galas. Ali Khan's wealth provided temporary luxuries, such as trips to exotic destinations and introductions to influential contacts. However, this relationship functioned primarily as a transitional phase, honing her skills in navigating complex social dynamics where discretion was key to avoiding public disgrace. Allure was a currency, and mutual advantages, such as enhanced status or business connections, were prioritized over long-term commitment. By the early 1950s, as Ali Khan's marriage to Hayworth dissolved in 1953, Pamela had already moved on, using the affair as a stepping stone to grander opportunities in Europe's upper echelons. Pamela's most profound and intense romantic entanglement in Paris unfolded with Gianni Agnelli, the heir to Italy's Fiat automotive empire and a symbol of post-war European resurgence. Agnelli, born in 1921 and nicknamed L'Avvocato, due to his law degree and sophisticated demeanor, inherited control of Fiat in the late 1940s, transforming it into a powerhouse of industrial innovation and exporting Italian design worldwide. He epitomized the jet set, blending industrial might with cultural refinement, as seen in his patronage of art and fashion, and effortless glamour through his yachting and skiing escapades. Their affair began around 1953 and lasted 5 tumultuous years, during which Pamela exhibited unwavering devotion, adapting herself entirely to his world. To deepen their connection, Pamela mastered fluent Italian, studying its grammar, idioms, and regional dialects to communicate seamlessly and participate in conversations with Agnelli's Italian associates. She immersed herself in Renaissance art, exploring works by masters like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, visiting museums such as the Uffizi in Florence, and discussing historical context to align with his erudite interests. Additionally, she educated herself on industrial design, learning about automotive engineering and aesthetics, and high finance, reflecting Fiat's operations in manufacturing and global trade. For Pamela, Agnelli represented the ultimate romantic ideal, a great love that promised to define her life with passion, security, and social elevation. Desperate for permanence, she initiated a conversion to Catholicism around 1955, undergoing religious instruction and embracing its rituals, convinced that Agnelli would divorce his wife, Princess Marella Caracciolo di Castagneto, whom he had married in 1953, and marry her instead. Despite Agnelli's repeated assurances of marriage, these promises proved illusory. The turning point came in 1958 when a catastrophic car accident left Agnelli gravely injured, with a broken leg and other complications that required prolonged recovery. During this vulnerable period, his influential family, the Agnellis, a dynasty rooted in Turin's industrial elite, intervened decisively. Viewing Pamela as an opportunistic adventuress from a foreign background, unfit for their Catholic aristocratic lineage, they orchestrated a reconciliation with Princess Marella, emphasizing familial stability, legacy preservation, and the need for legitimate heirs. This maneuver led Agnelli to abruptly sever ties with Pamela in 1958, inflicting profound emotional trauma. At 38 years old, she later confessed, "I was absolutely shattered. I was 33, and I thought my life was over." This heartbreak was perhaps her most severe wound, teaching her the unforgiving realities of power dynamics, where genuine love and loyalty could be overshadowed by pragmatic imperatives like dynastic alliances, social hierarchy, and economic interests. Resilient despite the devastation from the Agnelli affair, Pamela refused to succumb to defeat. Heartbroken, yet resolute, she pivoted to a new chapter by forming a significant relationship with Baron Elie de Rothschild around 1958. As a prominent member of the French Rothschild banking dynasty, founded in the 18th century and synonymous with centuries-old influence in finance, philanthropy, and society, Elie embodied stability, entrenched authority, and boundless affluence. Unlike the volatile passion with Agnelli, this bond was grounded in mutual respect and shared intellectual pursuits, lasting nearly a decade. Although marriage was unattainable, Elie remained wedded to his formidable wife, Liliane Fulspringer, a socialite with her own elite connections, who tolerated but did not dissolve the marriage. He provided unparalleled support. He established Pamela in a lavish residence on the elegant Rue Monsieur in Paris's 7th arrondissement, a street known for its historic mansions and proximity to cultural landmarks like the Invalides. The home was adorned with invaluable Impressionist artworks, such as pieces by Monet and Renoir, underscoring Elie's role as a collector and patron. Furthermore, he underwrote an opulent lifestyle, including ownership of a prestigious stable of champion racehorses, allowing her to indulge in equestrian events at venues like Longchamp and embed herself deeper in aristocratic pastimes that symbolize status and leisure. Over this period, Pamela transformed her home into one of Paris's most prestigious salons, a tradition echoing the Enlightenment-era gatherings of influential hostesses. She hosted an eclectic array of luminaries, European royalty like the Duke of Windsor, influential politicians such as French ministers or American diplomats, celebrated artists including surrealist poet Jean Cocteau, and cinematic icons like Orson Welles. These events were meticulously orchestrated with gourmet cuisine, fine wines, and stimulating discussions on topics from politics to literature. Pamela refined her expertise in high-level networking, turning gatherings into platforms that advanced guests' ambitions, such as forging business deals or cultural collaborations while elevating her own standing as a connector of worlds. However, this existence, while luxurious, resembled a refined confinement. In French society, the role of mistress, acknowledged mistress, was a semi-formalized institution, granting opulence, privileged access to exclusive events, and subtle influence through whispered advice or introductions. Yet, it perpetually denied Pamela the legitimacy she craved: full social acceptance as a wife, with rights to inheritance, family integration, and public acknowledgement. She remained the secondary figure in Eli's life, an exquisite companion valued for her beauty, wit, and conversational skills, but excluded from the sanctity of matrimony and the Rothschild inner circle. After nearly 10 years in this elegantly structured yet ultimately unfulfilling limbo, Pamela recognized the need for reinvention by the mid-1960s. The allure of America began to beckon with its booming economy, cultural shifts during the Kennedy era's Camelot glamour, and opportunities for women in emerging social scenes. Paris, while formative, had imposed constraints rooted in European traditions of class rigidity and gender roles. With her legendary Churchill name, refined skills in social navigation, and unyielding adaptability, Pamela prepared to embrace transatlantic prospects. This move would propel her into another phase of influence, including roles in American politics and high society, such as her later marriage to Averell Harriman in 1971, marking a shift from European courtesan to transatlantic power broker. In 1960, Pamela Harriman experienced a surprising reinvention in her personal and professional life, triggered by an unexpected romantic development. She reconnected with Leland Hayward, a renowned and influential American Broadway producer whose career had made him a legend in the theater world. Hayward was responsible for producing some of the most iconic Broadway shows of the era, including the groundbreaking musicals South Pacific 1949, Gypsy 1959, and The Sound of Music 1959. These productions not only achieved immense commercial success, but also shaped American cultural history, blending storytelling, music, and spectacle in ways that resonated with post-war audiences. At the time of their reconnection, Hayward was grappling with the dissolution of his marriage to the prominent socialite Slim Keith. This breakup was particularly poignant due to its interconnected nature. Keith had left Hayward for Averell Harriman, who had been Pamela's significant romantic partner during the World War II. This twist created a complex web of elite relationships, where personal histories overlapped in the high society circles of politics, wealth, and influence. Amid this emotional turmoil, Pamela and Leland discovered mutual comfort and attraction. Hayward was particularly drawn to Pamela's refined European sophistication, her worldly charm, and her astute insights into the dynamics of powerful men, qualities honed from her previous experiences in international aristocracy and diplomacy. Seizing this opportunity for change, Pamela made a decisive pivot in her life. She abandoned her existence in Paris, where she had been living as a mistress in the opulent but precarious world of European high society, and relocated to New York to marry Leland Hayward in 1960. This union marked her as his fifth wife, a role she embraced with strategic acumen. The marriage represented a brilliant shift in her trajectory. She exchanged the intimate, salon-based social scenes of Paris, characterized by discreet affairs and aristocratic intrigue, for the vibrant, public-facing glamour of Broadway's opening nights. This new environment introduced her to the bold, merit-driven culture of American theater and film, where success was measured by creativity, box office triumphs, and celebrity connections rather than inherited titles or old-world nobility. Pamela adapted seamlessly, applying her meticulous skills to embody the ideal producer's wife. She immersed herself in this milieu, attending premieres, networking with industry insiders, and leveraging her poise to enhance Hayward's professional standing. This transition was not merely geographical but cultural, allowing her to navigate the intersections of art, entertainment, and commerce in a rapidly evolving post-war America. Over the next decade, Pamela and Leland's marriage unfolded in a glamorous yet demanding setting. Their primary residence was the countryside estate known as Haywire, located in upstate New York, which quickly gained legendary status as a weekend retreat for Hollywood and Broadway's elite. The property hosted an array of illustrious guests, including legendary figures such as Frank Sinatra, whose charisma and musical talents defined the era, Fred Astaire, the iconic dancer and actor, Katharine Hepburn, known for her independent spirit and acclaimed performances, and Henry Fonda, a staple of American cinema. Pamela excelled as a hostess, orchestrating these gatherings with flawless precision, ensuring exquisite meals, engaging conversations, and an atmosphere of exclusivity that fostered lasting alliances. However, her contributions extended far beyond social facilitation. She became an indispensable partner in Hayward's professional and personal spheres. Facing his increasingly chaotic financial affairs, exacerbated by the high-stakes nature of theater production, Pamela stepped in to manage budgets, negotiate deals, and stabilize their economic situation. She also provided emotional support during his periods of profound depression, offering stability in a life marked by the pressures of creative genius and industry volatility. Additionally, she served as a shrewd advisor on his projects, drawing from her broad knowledge of culture and power dynamics to influence decisions on scripts, casting, and marketing. Throughout these 10 years, Pamela appeared to have achieved a semblance of domestic settlement, but this was deceptive. She was not merely a supportive spouse. She was actively managing a multifaceted household, overseeing a complex man whose career demanded constant attention, and simultaneously nurturing her extensive network of political and social contacts across continents. In this phase, Pamela was strategically acclimating to a new arena of influence, the uniquely American fusion of cultural production, celebrity status, and financial power, where entertainment moguls wielded sway comparable to political leaders. Despite the outward allure of their lifestyle, the later years of the marriage were overshadowed by tragedy. Leland Hayward's health began to deteriorate in the late 1960s, afflicted by a series of ailments that progressively weakened him. Pamela responded with remarkable dedication, committing herself fully to his care. Her loyalty was unwavering. She coordinated medical treatments, managed his daily needs, and provided emotional sustenance during this challenging period, demonstrating a depth of commitment that contrasted with her earlier, more transient relationships. Hayward passed away in 1971, leaving Pamela a widow at the age of 51. This loss was profound, marking the end of a decade-long partnership that had been both personally fulfilling and professionally enriching. However, his death also transformed her circumstances in a significant way. For the first time, Pamela inherited substantial wealth independently, granting her financial autonomy that she had not previously possessed. At an age when many women of her generation, born in the early 20th century and shaped by traditional gender roles, were retreating from public life into quiet retirement or obscurity, Pamela viewed this as a pivotal turning point. Rather than fading into the background, Pamela's widowhood at 51 signaled the commencement of her most ambitious and spectacular phase, a foray into the world of politics. With her newfound financial security, extensive networks, and accumulated wisdom from decades of navigating elite circles, she was poised to leverage her experiences into influential roles. This reinvention built on the lessons from her Broadway years, where she had mastered the art of blending culture, celebrity, and power. The stage was set for her to emerge as a key figure in American political fundraising and diplomacy, culminating in appointments such as U.S. ambassador to France later in life. This final act underscored her lifelong pattern of adaptation, resilience, and strategic ambition, turning personal loss into a platform for greater achievement. In the months following the death of her second husband, Leland Hayward, in March 1971, Pamela Harriman encountered a significant figure from her past at a moment that seemed almost serendipitous. Averil Harriman, who had been her first major romantic interest and a key mentor during her time in wartime London in the 1940s, re-entered her life. By this point, Harriman was 79 years old and had recently become a widower after the passing of his wife, Marie Norton, Whitney Harriman, in 1970. Their initial connection, forged amid the chaos and intensity of London during World War II, where Harriman served as a U.S. diplomat and Pamela was navigating her early adulthood, had created a deep bond that endured over the decades. This rekindling was not characterized by impulsive passion or dramatic gestures typical of youthful romances. Instead, it unfolded as a mature, deliberate union between two individuals who had led remarkably accomplished and parallel lives marked by influence, ambition, and resilience. The progression of their relationship was swift yet measured, reflecting the practicality and shared understanding that came from their long history. Within just 6 months of reconnecting, they decided to marry. The wedding took place on September the 27th, 1971, in a private ceremony that underscored the understated elegance of their partnership. This marriage transcended personal companionship. It represented a strategic alliance akin to a merger of two powerful entities. Averil Harriman was not merely affluent, he embodied American aristocracy through his lineage as the son of railroad magnate E. H. Harriman and his own illustrious career. He had served as governor of New York from 1955 to 1958, U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom, Secretary of Commerce under President Harry Truman, and a senior advisor in Democratic administrations. As a revered elder statesman in the Democratic Party, his network and resources provided Pamela with an unparalleled platform to expand her own sphere of influence. Empowered by her new marriage and Averil Harriman's substantial wealth, estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars from his family's Union Pacific Railroad fortune and other investments, Pamela Harriman began to emerge from her previous roles as a behind-the-scenes supporter and social facilitator. Harriman's enthusiastic support was instrumental, as he actively encouraged her to pursue her ambitions in the public arena. A pivotal step in this transformation was her decision to become a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1971. Shortly after their marriage, this move symbolized her full commitment to American political life, shedding her British roots and aligning herself firmly with the country where she now intended to make her mark. At this juncture, the Democratic Party was grappling with profound challenges. The Vietnam War had eroded public trust, leading to internal divisions and electoral setbacks, culminating in Richard Nixon's landslide victory in the 1972 presidential election. Pamela recognized an opportunity in this disarray and dedicated herself to the party's revival. She positioned herself as a key architect in rebuilding its infrastructure, focusing on fundraising, networking, and strategic alliances. Her efforts were not sporadic, but formed a deliberate project aimed at restoring the party's relevance and competitiveness in a post-Watergate era that would soon unfold. To facilitate her political endeavors, Pamela transformed the couple's opulent residence at 3038 North Street in Washington's Georgetown neighborhood into a central nexus for Democratic activities. This historic townhouse, with its grand rooms and elegant gardens, became the de facto headquarters for what could be described as the Democratic Party's government in exile during the Republican-dominated years of the Nixon and Ford administrations. The home was not just a venue for gatherings, it was a symbol of continuity and resistance, hosting a steady stream of politicians, intellectuals, donors, and journalists who were united in their opposition to the prevailing political order. This transformation involved meticulous curation of the space to foster an atmosphere conducive to serious discourse and deal-making. Pamela invested in renovations that enhanced its functionality for large events, ensuring it could accommodate intimate dinners as well as larger receptions. The residence's location in Georgetown, a hub for Washington's elite, amplified its role as a power center, drawing comparisons to salons of historical figures like Dolly Madison or Pearlie Mesta, but with a distinctly modern partisan edge. Pamela Harriman's influence truly crystallized through her renowned dinner parties, which evolved into legendary fixtures in Washington's political landscape. Unlike superficial socialite gatherings focused on entertainment and gossip, these events were engineered with precision for political advancement. Pamela approached each one with the rigor of a military strategist, conducting thorough research on her invitees. She would pore over their recent publications, speeches, policy positions, and personal backgrounds, often reading articles, books, or reports, to identify synergies and potential conflicts. Her seating arrangements were masterpieces of orchestration, crafted to spark productive interactions and achieve targeted outcomes. For instance, she might position an up-and-coming politician beside an affluent donor to cultivate financial support, or seat a critical journalist next to a persuasive expert to sway opinions on key issues. These placements were not random, but the result of hours of planning, sometimes involving multiple drafts of charts that considered personalities, ideologies, and agendas. Attendance at a Harriman dinner was a coveted endorsement, signaling to the attendee and the broader political world that they were deemed a significant player worthy of investment. This networking prowess extended beyond individual events, building a web of relationships that strengthened the Democratic Party's cohesion and reach. Pamela's charm, honed from years in European aristocracy and American high society, made her an irresistible host, blending warmth with subtle persuasion to extract commitments and foster loyalties. To institutionalize her influence, Pamela formalized her operations by establishing her own political action committee in the mid-1970s, colloquially known as PAMPAC. This entity quickly gained notoriety in Washington circles for its efficiency and impact. Operating under her direct guidance, PAMPAC specialized in the innovative technique of bundling, aggregating numerous small contributions from her vast network into substantial leveraged sums that could sway elections. Her ability to solicit donations was legendary. With a blend of grace, persistence, and personal appeal, she raised tens of millions of dollars for Democratic candidates across congressional, senatorial, and presidential races. Pamela's fundraising was not merely transactional. It was rooted in her keen eye for talent. She excelled at spotting promising figures early in their careers and providing them with the resources needed to ascend. A prime example was her early recognition of Bill Clinton, then a relatively obscure governor from Arkansas. In the late 1980s, she offered him a national stage through her events and secured vital funding, positioning him as a viable contender well before his 1992 presidential bid. During that campaign, Pamela served as one of Clinton's most steadfast and effective supporters, mobilizing her network to bolster his efforts against formidable opponents. Through these cumulative efforts, spanning marriage, citizenship, home-based operations, strategic events, and institutionalized fundraising, Pamela Harriman solidified her status as the preeminent female force within the Democratic Party by the early 1990s. Her contributions were instrumental in the party's resurgence, particularly in the lead-up to Clinton's victory, which marked a return to Democratic control of the White House after 12 years. Harriman's journey from a wartime ingenue to a political powerhouse exemplified her adaptability and ambition, making her an indispensable architect of modern democratic strategy. Her legacy endured, influencing party dynamics long after her active years and underscoring how personal history, strategic acumen, and relentless effort could reshape American politics. Throughout her remarkable ascent from a British aristocrat to an influential figure in American politics and society, Pamela Harriman faced persistent and often harsh scrutiny from critics who questioned the authenticity of her ambitions and relationships. Born Pamela Digby in 1920 into a family of minor nobility, she navigated the constraints of her era, a time when women's opportunities were severely limited, by leveraging her charisma, intelligence, and social connections. However, detractors frequently reduced her achievements to mere opportunism, branding her with the derogatory label of courtesan, this term evoking historical figures who traded intimacy for influence and wealth, implied that her romantic entanglements were calculated transactions rather than genuine affections. Critics portrayed her as a supergroupie, suggesting she strategically attached herself to a series of powerful men, each serving as a rung on her ladder to greater status and security. They cited her history of high-profile relationships as evidence. Her first marriage to Randolph Churchill, son of Winston Churchill during World War II, affairs with influential figures like Edward R. Murrow and Gianni Agnelli, and subsequent marriages to Broadway producer Leland Hayward, and finally to diplomat and businessman Averell Harriman. These unions, often with men of significant wealth and power, were seen not as partnerships but as stepping stones. For instance, her marriage to Harriman in 1971, when she was 51 and he was 79, was particularly scrutinized, with whispers that it was motivated by his vast fortune rather than love. The acerbic writer Truman Capote amplified this narrative in his unfinished novel, Answered Prayers, published posthumously in 1986, where he caricatured her as a character embodying ruthless social climbing, sophisticated on the surface but driven by cold ambition beneath. Capote's portrayal, drawn from real-life observations in elite circles, fueled public discourse, positioning Harriman as a symbol of gendered double standards, a woman who, in a patriarchal society, was condemned for employing the same strategic networking that men often used without reproach. This criticism raised deeper questions about agency and survival in mid-20th century society. Was Harriman a trailblazing woman who maximized the few avenues open to her, beauty, wit, and alliances, in an era before widespread gender equality? Or, as one rival scathingly remarked, was she merely the world's greatest living expert on the art of getting things from rich men? Her defenders argued the former, highlighting her diplomatic acumen, such as her role in fostering Anglo-American relations during the war, and her later political fundraising prowess for the Democratic Party. Yet, the narrative of transactionality persisted, overshadowing her substantive contributions and reflecting broader societal unease with women wielding power through unconventional means. The controversies surrounding Pamela Harriman intensified dramatically following the death of her third husband, Averell Harriman, on July 26, 1986, at the age of 94. As a former U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union and Britain, and heir to a railroad fortune, Harriman left behind an estate valued at over $100 million, encompassing real estate, investments, and art collections. In a decision that shocked many, his will bequeathed the entirety of this fortune to Pamela, effectively bypassing his 2 daughters and several grandchildren from his first marriage to Marie Norton Whitney. This move was perceived by the disinherited family members as a profound betrayal, igniting a firestorm of legal and public backlash. The Harriman children, particularly his daughter Kathleen Harriman Mortimer, viewed Pamela not as a devoted spouse but as an interloper who had manipulated an elderly man in his twilight years. Accusations flew that Pamela had unduly influenced Averell, perhaps exploiting his declining health to secure the inheritance. This narrative dovetailed with long-standing criticisms of her as a fortune hunter, now amplified by the tangible disinheritance of blood relatives. The family's fury was compounded by reports of Pamela's extravagant lifestyle during their marriage, which they believed had already begun eroding the family wealth. This period marked a turning point, transforming private grievances into a high-stakes public drama that exposed the vulnerabilities in Harriman's carefully cultivated image of sophistication and control. In response to the will, Harriman's children and grandchildren filed a lawsuit against Pamela in 1987, accusing her of mismanaging and squandering the estate through reckless spending and poor investment decisions. The case, heard in New York courts, became a sensational media spectacle, drawing comparisons to other high-profile inheritance disputes like those involving the Astor or Vanderbilt families. At the heart of the allegations was Pamela's reliance on a trusted lawyer who was deemed incompetent by the plaintiffs. They claimed he had advised on disastrous investments that hemorrhaged tens of millions from the Harriman Trust Fund. Court documents and testimonies unveiled the staggering extent of Pamela's expenditures, painting a portrait of opulence that bordered on excess. She maintained multiple luxurious residences, including a Georgetown mansion in Washington, D.C., a Virginia estate, and properties in Paris and Barbados. Her travel habits were equally lavish, featuring a private Boeing 727 jet for transatlantic jaunts. The lawsuit also spotlighted her renowned art collection, which included masterpieces like Vincent van Gogh's White Roses, purchased for $3.7 million in 1985. Facing mounting debts from the legal fees and losses, Pamela was compelled to auction this painting in 1990 for a then-record $53.9 million, using the proceeds to stabilize her finances. Other revelations included losses from failed ventures, such as real estate deals and stock investments that plummeted during the economic volatility of the late 1980s. The proceedings dragged on for years, with depositions and expert witnesses dissecting every financial transaction. This exposure not only quantified the financial toll, estimated at over $30 million in losses, but also humanized the conflict, revealing family letters and communications that underscored deep-seated resentments. For Pamela, the battle was exhausting, both emotionally and financially, as it forced her to defend her life choices in a courtroom setting, where her past relationships were once again dredged up as evidence of her alleged manipulative nature. The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court in 1994, with Pamela agreeing to pay a substantial sum, reportedly around $30 million, to the Harriman heirs, effectively redistributing a portion of the estate. While the settlement avoided a full trial verdict, it came at a steep cost to her public image. The protracted affair cemented her in the eyes of critics as a woman whose ambitions had finally overreached, leading to a dramatic fall from grace. Detractors saw it as karmic justice, a comeuppance for years of perceived exploitation. Headlines in tabloids and respectable outlets alike framed her as a cautionary tale of greed, reinforcing the courtesan stereotype and overshadowing her diplomatic achievements, such as her appointment as U.S. Ambassador to France by President Bill Clinton in 1993. For her admirers, however, the episode was a tragic epilogue to an otherwise illustrious life, illustrating the fragility of fortune even for the elite. It highlighted systemic issues, the challenges of blended families in inheritance law, the scrutiny faced by widows of powerful men, and the double-edged sword of wealth in an era of increasing media transparency. Pamela's resilience shone through. She continued her ambassadorial duties until 1997, earning praise for strengthening U.S.-French relations during a turbulent post-Cold War period. Yet, the scandal lingered, serving as a reminder that her successes were always tempered by controversy. Amid the public spectacles, a more private layer of hardship in Pamela Harriman's life was her tumultuous relationship with her only child, Winston Spencer Churchill, born in 1940 from her first marriage to Randolph Churchill. Named after his legendary grandfather, the British Prime Minister, young Winston grew up overshadowed by towering family legacies. Pamela's globe-trotting lifestyle and relentless pursuit of social and political influence often left him feeling neglected, as if he were a secondary figure in the grand narrative of her existence. Their bond was marked by decades of tension, including periods of estrangement fueled by Winston's resentment over her absentee parenting and her prioritization of high society engagements over family time. This strained dynamic manifested in various ways. Winston's own career as a British politician and journalist was inevitably compared to his forebears, adding pressure that Pamela's demanding life did little to alleviate. Private correspondences and interviews later revealed Winston's sense of abandonment, particularly during his formative years when Pamela was immersed in wartime London society and subsequent international relocations. The relationship improved somewhat in later years, especially after Pamela's ambassadorship, but the scars remained, underscoring a poignant personal cost to her monumental ambitions. It served as a stark contrast to her public triumphs, reminding observers that even the most adept navigators of power could falter in the intimate spheres of life, where emotional investments yielded far less predictable returns. Pamela Harriman's life exemplified the profound ability to reinvent oneself across various roles and stages. Born into British aristocracy as an English debutante, she first rose to prominence during the World War II as a close confidant to Winston Churchill, leveraging her social connections to support the war effort through diplomacy and networking. This period honed her skills in influence and strategy, setting the foundation for future transformations. Following the war, she transitioned into a more controversial phase in Paris, where she became known as the mistress to several influential figures among the city's elite, navigating the complexities of post-war society with charisma, ambition, and a keen understanding of power dynamics. This era was marked by scandal, but also by her ability to build lasting connections that would later prove invaluable. Later, she married a Broadway producer, embracing a life intertwined with American entertainment and culture, which introduced her to new social circles and opportunities in the United States. Upon relocating permanently, she established herself in Georgetown as a formidable power broker in Washington, D.C., hosting influential gatherings, fundraising for political causes, and building alliances with key figures in the Democratic Party. However, this period also brought challenges, including accusations of being a spendthrift due to her lavish lifestyle, extravagant spending, and financial dealings that occasionally drew public scrutiny and legal issues. Each of these chapters represented a dramatic shift, showcasing her adaptability, resilience, and strategic acumen in transforming personal circumstances, often fraught with adversity, into opportunities for advancement and greater influence. In 1993, Pamela Harriman's long-standing support for Bill Clinton culminated in a significant milestone when he was inaugurated as President of the United States. Having skillfully championed his career through years of fundraising, endorsements, and behind-the-scenes advocacy, she was rewarded with the position she desired most: United States Ambassador to France. This appointment was not just a political favor, but a profound validation of her life's journey, acknowledging her decades of maneuvering in elite circles, her ability to rally support for causes, and her transformation from a social figure to a key political operator. It highlighted how her persistent efforts in democratic politics, including hosting salons and leveraging her international connections, had paid off in the highest echelons of power. The ambassadorship carried a layer of breathtaking historical irony for Harriman. Decades earlier, she had first arrived in Paris as a divorced single mother, armed primarily with her aristocratic name, limited financial resources, and a determination to rebuild her life amid the ruins of post-war Europe. During that time, she became embroiled in scandalous relationships with prominent Parisian men, including industrialists and politicians, which defined her early years in the city and cemented her reputation as a captivating yet controversial figure. Now returning as Her Excellency, she represented the United States, the world's sole superpower at the time, in an official capacity that demanded respect and authority. This reversal of fortunes served as her ultimate vindication, erasing past perceptions of scandal and affirming her status as a respected international figure who had risen through sheer will and intellect. Embracing the role with her characteristic ferocious energy and meticulous attention to detail, qualities she had honed through every previous endeavor, from wartime networking to political brokering. She was resolute in demonstrating her capabilities beyond mere social hosting. Her staff often recounted her intense dedication, including late-night sessions, where she meticulously reviewed dense policy documents, analyzed international reports, and prepared for meetings with a depth that surpassed many seasoned professionals. As she confided to a friend, "They expect me to be a hostess. I will show them I am a stateswoman." Through this determination, she successfully charmed the often prickly French political establishment by engaging in thoughtful dialogues, attending cultural events, and fostering mutual understanding. She adeptly navigated and resolved diplomatic tensions, such as trade disputes and cultural exchanges, using her personal charm and strategic insights to bridge gaps. Additionally, she strategically utilized the opulent ambassador's residence as a venue for statecraft, hosting high-level dinners, receptions, and negotiations that strengthened bilateral relations and advanced U.S. interests. By all contemporary accounts, including reports from diplomats and media observers, her performance was exemplary, establishing her as a highly effective ambassador who not only maintained but elevated the U.S.-France alliance during her tenure through innovative diplomacy and unwavering commitment. Pamela Harriman's remarkable story concluded abruptly in February 1997, at the age of 76, in a manner that echoed the glamour and drama of her life. While performing her routine daily laps in the luxurious swimming pool at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, a venue emblematic of the opulence, high society, and indulgent lifestyle that had long characterized her experiences in France, she suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Despite immediate medical attention, she passed away shortly thereafter, with the city that had witnessed her most scandalous affairs, glamorous pursuits, and eventual triumphs serving as the backdrop for her final moments. This poetic closure highlighted the full circle of her Parisian chapters, from her initial arrival as an outsider seeking reinvention to her departure as a revered diplomat who had left an indelible mark on international relations. In a profound gesture of respect, the French government honored Pamela Harriman with a funeral featuring full military honors, an exceptional tribute seldom extended to foreign diplomats and reflecting the deep admiration for her contributions. This recognition underscored the impact of her ambassadorship, the bridges she built between nations, and the esteem in which she was held by French officials, politicians, and the public. Her life, marked by continuous reinvention and culminating in diplomatic excellence, left an enduring legacy as a symbol of perseverance, strategic brilliance, and the transformative power of ambition in both personal and public spheres, inspiring future generations to view challenges as stepping stones to greater achievements. So who was Pamela Harriman? Was she a political genius or a predator? A feminist icon who broke the rules in a man's world? Or a woman who simply perfected the age-old art of using feminine wiles to get ahead? The truth, as it so often is far more complex and fascinating. She was a product of her time, a woman born into a world where her options were supposed to be marriage or obscurity. She chose a third path, one she carved out for herself with ruthless intelligence, intoxicating charm, and a will of iron. Her legacy is not just in the political campaigns she funded or the diplomatic posts she held. It's in the way she demonstrated that soft power, the power of connection, persuasion, and influence, could be as potent as any army or treasury. She understood that the personal was political long before the phrase became a cliché. She used the drawing room and the dinner table as her battlefield and her boardroom. Her life is a controversial but undeniable story of female empowerment, achieved through means that many would question, but with results that no one can deny. Pamela Harriman remains a fascinating, frustrating, and endlessly compelling figure because she refused to be simple. She was a survivor, a strategist, a lover, and a leader, a woman who lived life on a grand scale and on her own audacious terms. She collected powerful men, yes, but in the end, the only power that truly mattered was the power she had so painstakingly and so brilliantly built for herself.